Hello, Cassidy here, and we are live for another monthly open live chat. I have been a little MIA recently with regular posts. I had some vacation and my family was in town, and so I took it a little slow last month, but as promised, I am here to ramble a little bit and open the door for anybody who is looking for a good conversation. So the link is already below in the chat if you would like to join. I will put it right now in the YouTube chat. Sorry, give me a second. And I'll pin it so that uh, people who'd like to join can join. Sorry, I tried to do this earlier and it got a little behind. Okay. Okay, there it is. And so I'm going to chat a little bit, and then once I'm ready to kind of bring people in, I'll bring people in, but feel free to join at any time in the background. So today I want to start by talking about something that sort of came up in my last live chat with Ivan. And there's kind of a couple threads that I want to talk about, and I'm going to try to weave them together. But I want to start with a question that Ivan posed to me last time because I thought it was a really interesting question, and a question that I'd actually been sort of contemplating and bubbling in the last several months. And that was, why do I do this? And what is it that I think that I'm doing here on YouTube? And I thought it was a really good question. And I think over time, the why has sort of changed, but underneath it all, I sort of realized as I've been mulling over that question this last month is that at the heart of what I think I'm doing here is this sense that I need a place to publicly puzzle. I needed a place where I could take my ideas and the things that I was thinking about and the things that were plaguing me and find a way to bring order to them and make sense to them, and maybe potentially find some people to connect with and talk about those things with, so that I could think more clearly about the things that I was trying to manage. And I really just got tired of puzzling alone. And so for a while I would do that with friends and strangers in my life, where I would just meet people. But it became clear that there was maybe a different way that I could be doing this. And I thought YouTube was an interesting way to try that. And as I think about that in the sense of what I do, I think for me, it kind of feels like that reflection, or that core of what it is that I feel like I'm doing here definitely extends out to sort of the greater sort of estuary TLC channels that are sort of doing similar things to me. You know, we talk often about what is TLC and what is estuary and why do we use those words. And I think we use those words because we don't have a better way to describe exactly what's going on. And it's sort of a good way to talk about something that's happening and give it a name without hemming and hawing about it and using too many definitions. But if you really think about a lot of these people who identify with those titles or those monikers, we have very little that unifies us. We don't have a similar religious background. Generally, I mean, a lot of us are Christian, but even then, we're often from very different denominations. We don't have a lot of like cultural and lived experience similarity necessarily. We certainly enjoy some of the same content, but even as we listen to that, there's different levels of enjoyment in each of those things, and we find different meaning in the way that we're exploring those things. But even the confidence of the things that we believe and the people that we talk to and the ideas we explore are different. There are some who are much more confident and secure in the things that they believe, and then there are others who are wildly unsure and trying to figure it out. Yet we're all coming together and trying to puzzle these things together and find people we trust to do that with. And I think it creates a really interesting dynamic in how we create, where there's not a lot of pressure of trying to grow fast, or even grow big and get a lot of views, because that's not really the point. You don't really need a huge, vast um, group of people watching you to find enough people to help kind of put things together and think through things in an interesting way. And in fact, if you go too fast, there's something about that kind of gets tricky. And I've been thinking about this in relation to some of the other content that I've been seeing around in the YouTube space. I recently watched the Richard Dawkins conversation with Jordan Peterson. My husband was watching it, and I came away halfway through, and to be honest, I wasn't that impressed by the conversation. There was, having listened to a lot of Richard Dawkins and probably a lot of Jordan Peterson as well at this point, there was sort of the sense of like these two people are sort of coming together with an expectation of the sort of rules in the game that is going to be played, and not being so flexible as to how the other person in that conversation wants to play the game. And so there was a little bit of tension of feeling like, a little bit of monologuing on each side, until sort of the very end, where you got to this place where there was this piece where they found some common ground where they both wanted to explore. And, then something sort of became interesting. But what I found really interesting about the two is that in some ways, Peterson fell more into sort of this puzzling mentality than I think Dawkins did, which is why it's not very surprising to me that he has so much interest for a lot of people who are a part of Estuary, who've come out of whatever the Peterson movement is, to this little space where we're trying to have these conversations. And I think part of that is I imagine Peterson isn't fully set in his ideas of what he thinks religiously, and he wants to puzzle with people and challenge himself and be challenged by others to have those things. Yet Dawkins was just very set in his idea of what religion is and his non-interest in it. And so there wasn't that sense of the place where he wanted to puzzle or to participate in that conversation. And, I think for me, it's understandable. There's so many people on both sides of the aisle who have that confidence, who don't have that sort of intrigue or interest in really turning around the questions. But I feel like it made for a less than interesting pairing, where this sort of idea of like conversations being serious play gave room for a really interactive and how would you say it? It's not even just interactive, but like intriguing and interesting conversation to watch as a bystander. You just kind of feel like two people sort of missing each other. And I think, this isn't just happening in sort of the religious space, but you're also seeing this happen in sort of the political space, particularly in the face of like American elections, where you're not having people really puzzling about what it is to, find good leaders and make decisions when you have a vote to put to who's going to be at the head of your country. It just seems like a battleground. And I think there is a level at which the space to have that puzzling is needed. And not that there isn't space as well for some of these more confident type people who can come and make a defense for whatever it is they believe. But that's just generally not exactly what's happening in TLC. Of course, there's always some people making arguments, and sometimes the way that we puzzle goes into those sort of like debate style or even steel manning of trying to like create the strongest how would you say it? The strongest arguments and counter for the thing that you're putting out. But it doesn't. It's kind of disappointing to me that it's not that inquisitiveness is not. It's not bleeding into other parts of the world. I see the comment here from the person behind. I'm not going to put anybody on screen if you're not going to go on camera. If I don't know you, if I know you and I know you're safe, well, then I will. But so for that, sorry, not right now. Um, anyways, um, so obviously there's this sort of like exploration, puzzling versus debating clash that's happening in a lot of these conversations that we're having online in the big meaning space. But I found it really interesting the way that that's sort of shifting, and it kind of became sort of um, well, I stumbled upon a Justin Brierley video with Alex O'Connor that kind of gave me a sense of the difference in the way those things were shifting. And I thought it was really interesting to watch that after seeing him try to mediate this debate, trying to get these two people from very different sides to come together and yeah, really have a conversation. But he was talking with Justin Brierley and talking about sort of his journey on YouTube and sort of why he started. And, he started, just doing sort of different things, skateboard videos, music videos, all of those things. And yeah, eventually he kind of got some success on, how do you say? Oh, yeah, defending some sort of religious topic. And then it sort of went from there, and it grew into what he is now. And he talked about how sometimes he was embarrassed about the videos that he was putting out when he was younger, and how he would look at the arguments and realize, oh, I just didn't understand what was happening in the argument that was really going back then. And I would in some ways I'd like to take it down and remove it, but I kind of leave it up because it becomes this, this preservation of this journey that I'm going on and this change that has happened with me. And I have a deep respect for that. And I think that is something I've tried to do with the estuary stuff. And as I'm publicly puzzling through the ways that my ideas are changing and the way that, my worldview has shifted on some of my deeply held beliefs, even if some of the confidence has stayed the same, but have changed in the way that they're implemented and the fullness of the way those things are seen in my life. And so there's something kind of admirable about that decision to let that sort of become this place where we can look at that transition. But I think the most interesting thing he talked about is how he would look at some of those old videos that he now looks at and is sort of embarrassed about because the arguments weren't very good and he didn't really understand what's being said. And what concerned him even more was looking at the comment section, and they were just filled with comments of people telling him how great the arguments were and how wonderful it was, and just so much praise for all of this. And it was sort of this realization that just because we have this positive reaction, we're getting all of these views, it doesn't necessarily reflect the quality of the thing that we're producing. And it kind of gave me a little bit of respect for whatever has been happening here in this little space on YouTube, where we're trying to explore ideas, not in sort of a debate style way or even a defensive way, but giving space to ask questions and giving people spaces to work through those ideas, because it creates a space where we can come, but it doesn't have to always be total praise or total breaking down and sort of what's the right word? Disregarding the people that are in front of you. It's like creating the space where we can meet each other where we're at and compare notes and find ways to not placate the things we think are true, but have a bit of grace in the way that we share them and the way that we uncover those things and change as we move on through life and understand the mystery of what it is and the way that it all sort of comes together. So those are sort of some things I'm thinking about. If anybody would like to join in on the conversation with this, or sort of uh, a tangent of what we've started, that's absolutely fine. If you can't join but you'd like to leave a comment, that's also helpful, because then I can bounce off and move. But again, yes, I would ask that if I do not know you, um, you put your camera on. Just I know the troll game. I'm not playing that. Um, Hello, Upcycle Club. So nice to see you. Always lovely to see you in the comment sections. Tayo, also lovely. Enjoy the little cowboy hat. It goes back to my roots. Again, most notable working. Aaron, how are you? So good to see you. And Nico, thank you for the wave. Thanks for listening, and thank you for all the people who are sitting and listening to me babble. Yeah, I'm gonna give about 15 minutes to see if somebody jumps in. I will ramble my way through through some of this in the 15 minutes. If not, and then if somebody comes, we'll see how that all goes, and yeah, we can just have a conversation. Um, it's funny. I think some of the content that I have been thinking about is it wouldn't surprise me that it's being thought about um, by a lot of people. Oh, hi Nico. That's okay. Please do your work. I'm glad I can ramble and entertain you as you try to get something productive done. um, but I noticed that Luke Thompson did a live stream about some of these things, and yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Oh, we have somebody in. Shane, how are you?
Hi, am I on? Oh, hi, Cass.
Hi, how are you?
Uh, Years older, and so are you in age at least?
Yeah, how's it going?
Good, good. I got back from Stockton last night. I went to liturgy yesterday, and it's pretty much our the parish is super tight, so I just spend every weekend in like Stockton, and then head back home.
Yeah,
So it's going good. I'm a
good.
catechumen now.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah. Weren't you a catechumen last time? Like when like years ago when we were doing the like bridges of meaning thing?
Yeah. Well, I was a catechumen, then eventually became full-blown Orthodox. So I've been
Yeah.
Orthodox oof, almost 3 years now. How
That's
is
amazing.
so? How's that experience been for you as you're officially entered in some sort of
Right.
association with Orthodoxy?
I found lots of Saint Paisios said if once a young person has experienced the grace of God, it would take a crane to lift them out of the church. So that's been my experience.
Mm.
Yeah. It's funny because like there's the whole thing with like I wonder if there's a way because I see you, but it's not full screen, and there's two images of me, and I'm trying not to be like so, but this'll work. So like it's interesting just because like in the orthosphere, like a lot of the cradle Orthodox people and people who were Orthodox before Peterson did his conversation with Pajot, they're talking about newly illumined and catechumens and people who are curious about orthodoxy as like probably not going to last.
Hmm.
And it's funny just because like I feel like if I hadn't have interacted with you and Paul and the people there, I don't think that I would have been informed enough and had the um because we kept our like self to standards like this. And so it's like I don't think that I would have been able to last had I not been had to have that responsibility with another person, just because like those were, I think it's easy when you're, because during that COVID thing, everyone was like isolated. And I think it's easy in the modern day to like shrug off your relationships and say like just hop into nihilism. But I think it's because of these spaces that going into a community, like yesterday, I was like, oh, wow, these people actually have only known me for like a year because I've been a catechumen a year. And it's like, oh, like I should be responsible for how I treat these people. And I don't think that the modern world is prepared for that sort of thing for the normal person, except like people in the comments, like there's obviously a desire to want to actually be in community. But so I think it's actually helpful in a real sense, just because like I'm a catechumen and I've been a year, and it seems like whatever was happening in Estuary prevailed over the modern zeitgeist of like nihilism and being isolated and alienated. So it's going really well, Cassidy.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. I think isolation can lead to some really crazy stuff and some really, it can lead us as individuals into not so good places. And so having that space where you can come and have community and really get that sense of the responsibility we have to each other, I think that's really good. And I'm glad you found that.
Yeah. And that's I mean, that's the main, like the devil's tool is to isolate people, right? And yeah, so yeah, it's good. I found a better outlet like for spending money. It's like just get a bunch of freaking icons. And
well, that's still a vice, but I digress.
Well, okay, but if you give your life to the earth, it will give you a grave. But if you give your life to heaven, it will give you a throne. And that's what the church is, right? That's the church. Like that's why people who serve the church like most of the saints that I've seen, I was like, oh, they serve the church in some capacity. And so it's like, oh, they gave their life to the church gave them a throne.
Well, I would say they gave their lives to others. Yeah. Whether it was in the church or out of it. But yeah, there's something about sacrificing their own life for the sake of the other.
Yes. And I would only tell you this just because I don't think that I have just had
you are live.
Yeah. So, well, I would tell you this is that like Pageau had a small little video of him during a conference. It was basically about God as man. So it's like that Christ is the culmination of man and every good quality of man, and in some sense that's how he's the Son of Man. That's what I think, but Pageau said it in a different way, and it's like, oh, so you can either serve illusions or you can serve something real, which is the person right in front of you, insofar as you've actually tried to understand him, and then you can actually understand what he wants and try and like help him get that in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Shane, you jumped on. Was there a reason? Like, is there something that I said that sparked something in you, or is there another topic that you had an interest in exploring?
Well, yeah, honestly, when I saw you went live and I started watching it, you're like, if you want to jump on. And I was like, I don't know if there's anything I could tell Cassidy that she doesn't already know.
There's plenty. I'm pretty dumb. Right? There's lots of things I don't know.
But so I think part of it had to do because I was like, okay, so you were a catechumen, and I was like, oh, so she's probably been baptized, or she moved with, oh gosh, Ferdy, and she just decided to ditch the church and go with Ferdy. But I'm glad you stayed.
Well, Ferdy's also Orthodox, so
awesome.
There was no ditching the church or Ferdy. It was finding a way to figure out if both could coexist. And
Glory to God.
thank God, yeah, thank God they did.
Yeah. I think the saints, and part of it was like, so yesterday was the feast day of the fathers of the Council of Nicaea,
Mhm.
and my patron saint happens to be Athanasius, and so I think so. As far as I think the because he's the patron saint of the defender of the faith, and you were talking about how like, oh, it's more the TLC space is more about puzzling through things,
Mhm.
and sometimes you can put up like I was thinking about like the debate format that you were talking about is like less as more like formulaic, and then whatever's happening at TLC like puzzling is more exploratory. And I don't know, I just think I think it's all good stuff. There's not one person that I know from the TLC space who is doing worse than they were like when the thing started. As far as me personally, I mean, if
I mean, there probably are.
yeah, I know, but
There's just you don't
they're
know.
doing yeah, exactly.
Because I don't think the TLC space is healthy for all people at all times. I
Yes,
think there
well,
are times
obviously.
where like it
Figure
gets
A.
Alonia TLC. It's sort of shorthand for something we call this little corner, which is the best way that I can describe it is sort of like YouTube channels or personalities or people who have sort of come out of the estuary movement or sort of through Paul Vanderklay, like a lot of what the work he's done to kind of have conversations with each other about meaning questions. I think generally people, when they're saying TLC, they're often talking about personalities who create content like myself, but I tend to see it as broader. Something more of like people who kind of participate in estuary, mostly on the online spaces, although it's starting to come on the in-person spaces as well. So it's this weird little corner of people who are coming together, who have met each other through Paul Vanderklay to have these conversations.
So I guess like the Saints also is something that I was like, because honestly, it's like they're saints, and I've found, and they're part of the body of Christ, and the Orthodox believe they're alive now, and so like I don't know, I have this sense of like like they're kind of the ones that's like, okay, why are like why am I not dead right now? Why is the world still like hanging on? And I think it's like I think the conversations that we have are good, but I think that also it's like the saints are here with us. And it's like I guess that would almost be like maybe a what do you call it when you're saying your faith story? I forgot, like your testimony.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like wherever two are gathered in my name, there I am. And I just I like have a hard time like being like when people try and have conversations like in this little corner, and they start bringing up like atheism beyond like it's like if you start getting a negative feeling from someone, or you think they're in bad faith or whatever, and they're genuinely not trying to do good, I have this sense of where it's like how do you get first of all, like it's like like and people have been in those situations. I feel like in the TLC, well, maybe have been in those situations. It's like, why is everybody who's been interacting on the internet not doing? Okay, so that's what I was thinking. So why is everybody not doing worse? And what are you doing here? I think that the art, because I was watching you and I was like, oh, she's been having continuous conversations for years now.
Yeah,
And
longer than I want to admit. Almost a decade. Not online, but almost a decade of yeah, conversations.
and that's good. And that's like, I'm like, oh, she's really good at having conversations now. And I think that's something like there's not many people who are good at that. And I think like that's something like to be grateful for, like that you're good at having conversations. And um
Yeah,
yeah.
there's always the double-edged sword with that, right? Because we could just if if you're able to spin words long enough, um, yeah, if you're able to spin words long enough, you get lost in the reality of what it is to really live life. And that's always sort of the downside of TLC estuary, where it's like you get caught in the exploration and the conversation without ever taking a step, and that's really that's really difficult. Ilonia, I don't know if I'm saying your name right. Shane was just watching and joined. There's a link in below, and then there's a link also in I think I pinned it at the top of the chat where you can join as
Is she,
well.
is
Obviously,
she,
I ask that if I don't know you, you put your camera on. But
is
if you'd like to join in the conversation, you absolutely can. That's definitely welcome. I love to have meet new people and have places where we can chat. But I've actually known Shane for a while. We haven't talked in quite a while, but we used to talk a lot on the British of Meaning Discord when this stuff all started. Hi, Hezi. So good to
is
see
she
you around.
asking how I found my patron saint?
Oh, maybe that might be what she's asking. I thought she was asking how I found you.
How
Okay, yeah.
did
How did you find your patron saint? Sorry, I read that wrong. Thanks, Shane.
it's okay.
What would you prefer I call you? Athanasius.
Honestly, I mean, I asked my spiritual father, I was like, can I introduce myself as Athanasius? And he's like, yeah, that's who you are. And then he was like, that's who your true identity is. Like, your truest identity is Saint Athanasius. That's your identity in Christ. And so that's really awesome. He was like, it's epic, right? I was like, yeah. And so basically, we were talking. So it was like 3 years ago. I read first. I read the first patristic work I read was Life of Moses, and then I read by Saint Gregory of Nyssa, and then I read On the Incarnation, and then fast forward like 3 years, and me and my spiritual father, he's like, we went and had like chicken tenders at this chicken place, and he was like, who do we eating and having a good old time? He's like, who do you want to be your patron saint? And I was like, either Saint John of the Apocalypse, Saint John Chrysostom, and then I had like a bunch lined up, and then I said Athanasius, and then he looked up, and mind you, I was homeless at the time. Like I was homeless like a year ago, and he looked up in the air and he was like, Athanasius against the world. And then like just the gleam in his eye, I was like, I've got to go with that one because he seemed to be inspired by that. And so I went with Athanasius Contra Mundum. I think it was mostly because things like in my life, like I had a conversation with Paul Vanderklay that I recently had him take down, but it was basically like, I feel like before I was a catechumen, but when I still had read the Church Fathers, we were talking and I had like outlined Orthodox belief in a sense and came to Orthodox conclusions. And then I had him take it down because of what you were saying. You were like, oh, well, I think it became like a sticking point, and it was either I stop thinking or I make this a point of spiritual pride and prelest because I had done this wonderful thing in my own mind. And I was like, I'm just going to have him take it down so I can keep like doing stuff that I think is good. But I was 27 when I did that. And St. Athanasius was 27 when he defended the Trinity at the Council of Nicaea. And I thought that was pretty amazing. And then he also had a red beard. He was black and short though, so we don't have those things in common. And there's things I think like is fun when you like find things after the fact. Like, who's your patron saint, Cassidy?
St. Juliana Lazarevo of Lazarevo.
That's man. Of Lazarevo?
Lazarevo.
Lazarevo. Okay. But yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and it's cool because there's not much like pressure with Athanasius because he wasn't even well known when he was around, and it's like, oh, so I can just like maintain like if I hold the to the Nicene Creed and I just live a Christian life. It's like that's all. Prayer and fasting is what saves you. Like is what is all you have to do. You don't have to become famous. So.
No. Well, hi Ivan. Welcome to the chat. We just have a OrthoBro chat here today.
Yeah. I was super happy to see that. Like, glory to God. Hi, Shane. Hi, Athanasius, man. I hadn't. I think I've seen some of your content before, something like that. Or I feel like I've seen your face before. But good to meet you, man. So I only caught the last part of what you were talking about. Because in fact, like when you were going to go on, I had this time slotted to do content for myself, and I said, well, if I finish early, I'm gonna jump in and try to participate because I thought the topic was super interesting.
Well, great. Well, what do you what would you like to add? What struck out? What struck to you about the topic?
Well, I think we kind of talked about it a little bit before the last time we talked about it. So right now I'm in the middle of a friendly feud in the sense of like my channel deals more with, let's say, political philosophy, and there's kind of a lot of especially due to the elections in the US and such, there's a lot of political talk, and I'm going to share afterwards if you guys want it, if you don't mind, Cassidy. But no. I'm in a small feud with fellow content creators, with fellow Orthodox content creators, because I feel like they're trying to propose a very very hierarchical way of viewing things. Like they say that let's say rights don't exist, only duties exist, and these guys are like recent converts. They have very big platforms. They're Andrew Wilson from The Crucible and made by Jim Bob, who, but in general, I would say that they're good guys. I have nothing against them. In fact, Jim Bob has been super gracious to me. I've talked with him several times. He's interacted. Like, I mean, I feel like they're trying to do things correctly, but they're trying to like stumble in a sense into having a positive impact with others. And oh no, OrthoBro. yeah. Nothing new under the sun. But anyway, so yeah, I'm trying not to replicate the same mistakes that other people are making, and I'm so involved with my parish that mostly these things now. It's not that it's not important to have like good, let's say, philosophical or intellectual or theological defenses for these things, but real theology for us Orthodox is prayer. Real theology is loving your fellow man. So like to make disparaging comments or insulting others or things like that is not really like it's not really Christian, to be honest. So even if you have like the right dogma, if you don't love the other person as a Christian, then it's for nothing. Because actually, the Orthodox position is that you change the world by acquiring the spirit of peace. Like you have to become a saint yourself, and like talking about ideas and such. It's interesting, but not really the point, of Orthodoxy.
No. Well, and that's sort of why I try to. I don't avoid talking about orthodoxy, but I try not to be some sort of apologist for orthodoxy or too much of an authority on it, because I recognize I'm not even close to being in a position to be that. But yeah, my deacon, when I was a catechumen, I was probably a catechumen for a couple of weeks. One of the first things he told me was like, the biggest mistake so many catechumens do is they start a podcast. And it made me laugh, because it's like, yeah, I think there's true. You have this like this eagerness where you're like, oh, I want to like share this thing and explore this thing, but there's the level in which you're kind of like, hold on, this is not maybe I need to learn a lot more before you can put yourself on the internet as an expert on that. And that's sort of one of the reasons I've tried to, like, as I've actually entered in the church, talk about it less publicly, because I think that there's some wisdom in that. But yeah, it's a tricky world where it's like, in Athanasius, I take your points of like the defense of Christianity. I think that there is a value in finding a defense for Christianity and having that space where we defend the thing that is true. Yet there's this sense of what it means to defend Christianity might be more nuanced than what comes out on the internet. If that makes any sense.
No, it makes sense, because honestly, it's like you're better if you really want to, like, it's like tithe and go to church, and that's probably like better than there was some guy on Facebook, and he was like, if you're battling online heretics and then going straight to Pornhub, you probably don't need like this massive elder from some monastery to be your spiritual father. Your sins are pretty normal, and you should like. So I think honestly, it's more like just battle your own sin. That's like, and that's way more fulfilling. Like that's why I haven't been like I was like, no, I'm not doing a YouTube channel ever again. I'm not doing like this, that, and the other thing, because there's, first of all, like there's guys actually like priests who are really good at that, and they have their thing they're doing, and it's like, honestly, and then there's it's like, oh, like I've just like every time I go to my spiritual father, he says just prayer and like stick to your prayer, and then after that it's like, oh, it's just dealing with reality. Like prayer ultimately is dealing with reality, rather than that's why I do think that's correct, Cassidy. Like talking about it's probably a good thing talking about orthodoxy less, because like true prayer is just being in line with God. Like,
yeah, and it's sort of this weird balance, because it is so ingrained in my life. It's like at the core of a lot of what I'm doing and what I'm learning. But it's kind of going back to this idea of puzzling. I don't puzzle orthodoxy much anymore. Like I'm trying to learn it, but it's not something I feel like I have to get a sense of whether it's true or like puzzle through it. I just kind of have to like let it shift and change me. A lot of the things that are coming up to me in life is sort of like, okay, well, how do you live well? As a new convert, but as like a mother, as a expat, like how do you live and engage well? And those questions just operate at a different level where you can't really ignore the faith part, because it's just so, at least how I live faith, it's just so ingrained in my life and fundamental in the way it's shaping me and changing me. But you're like, it's not in this place where I have to come up with arguments of like why Orthodox theology is the best, which is not even, and not that it's outside of an Orthodox space, but that's not quite the space in which Orthodoxy works anyways.
So I was, can I tell a story?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was 2 weeks at work. I was, so I'm working at a casino now, and I'm working at a Wahlburgers, and this woman was making accusations that I did some uncouth thing. And then she took it to management, and then they were like, I sat there and they were talking to me, and they told me what was being said that I had done. And I was like, honestly, like my answer was, I don't remember doing that. And it was because why would somebody say that? And also they were going to check the cameras. So I was like, if I did that, I did that. Like, it didn't make sense to me why they weren't coming to me after they checked the cameras. Like, check the cameras first. And so nothing came of it, but she did get fired a week later for harassment on somebody else. And now there's like, I'm getting so much attention from women that I'm not, like, I had to ask, like, yesterday, my buddies I was hanging out with from church, I was like, what do I do? Like, people are halfway flashing me, showing me their chest tattoos, telling me this, that, and the other thing. I'll show you mine if you show me yours. And I was like, what do I do with this? But that was an insinuation comment. She wasn't actually asking. And so I thought of, like, it's like, yes, that is an actual situation that happened that you wouldn't think has to do with theology, but then it's like they will fall into the very pit that they set for you. And that's what I thought as soon as, that's what I had faith in while I was going through that. Like, before she got fired, I was like, people were like, how are you doing? And they saw me smiling. I was like, I'm doing just great, because things were going great. And then she ended up getting fired because I knew it was a lie. And that's that. I knew it was, I knew that I shouldn't accuse her, because who knows what she's going through, but I don't actually think I did that. And nothing, they checked the cameras. There was nothing, I didn't do that. And so I think, like, unless they didn't check all the footage. So that is something that I went through, and it was completely, the external situation was what it was, but I knew that, like, God's going to win. No matter, even against, we pray for, like, the prayers at night is like, don't let my wickedness prevail over your inexpressible goodness and mercy. And that's what I honestly hope. Like, if I'm doing something wrong, I don't want that to prevail over the goodness that's there. And so, yeah, it's like real world situations that have actual consequences. Of course, you're going to go to God, but they're actual things with particular things that need to be, like, dealt with. So that's the story. And I still have the job. I didn't get fired for.
I'm glad you didn't get fired.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So then there were also things where it's like, you see, like, management. What I don't understand sometimes is, like, management coming to me and like if there's a situation that's happening that they try to, I guess I sort of understand it, because some, what did I say? Like, they were talking about stuff. They were, oh yeah, I asked this, I asked one, her coworker, we've worked since day one, and like other people have cycled through, so we're tight. And then first thing I was like, because I've been working out, I was like, can you tell I've been working out? Like, as like, just like an asshole, but trying like in a funny, like obviously an asshole, like ironically almost. And I guess she said that like that bothered her. So I was like, okay. And then, but later we were just having a conversation, and then it was brought to me that she had a problem. But the thing that they told me that she said I said was something that I didn't say. And then it turned out that she didn't even say anything about that. She was fine with me. But somebody else brought something to her. That's crazy also, because somebody else brought something to management that I said that I didn't say, and they ended up getting fired also. Because I was trying to figure out, what did she do wrong to where she got fired?
Well, let's ground it a little bit.
Okay.
Into this conversation, because that's a lot of information that I don't. Yeah, that it's.
Well, I guess I was just trying to give an example of like how you were saying that you're not trying to talk so much about it, but be in but it still informs your life. Mm-hmm. Like these are things that I was talking to my buddies about yesterday, and I've been dealing with. But the ultimate like thing is the words of like the word of God is what I know is the truth, and is like, so when I'm going into those things, I'm like into a situation that I want to go well. I'm doing it because I think it's pleasing to God. And then when things happen, when you try and do good, there was another saying, I forgot who it was. It was like, when you try to do good, expect evil to go against it. And then something happened. And I think it's just like St. Paisios, don't let nothing deprive you of hope. So these are like, it was either lay on my bed and do nothing, or like actually get a job, get a car, but things get complicated when you try and do good things. So
no, I completely identify with what you're saying, Shane, because sometimes I know it's very hard, especially for us modern people, to just like listen to other people's story and like already start to jump into, let's say, a metacognition of like, why are they telling me this story and this and that, and as if there was like some big agenda, or because a lot of stuff is super performative as well. Like we live in a very performative society where people like simply like try to like act a certain way in order to create a false image and like gain fruits from that. And like when I was hearing your story, like what got me is yes, exactly that kind of simplicity of like trying to like dance to the music of the spheres, dance to like what God is calling you to do, and the rest can come and go like without like you don't care about it, and you're just living your life, and you start to see like the hand of God kind of guiding you in a sense of like steering you a little bit in that direction. And sometimes something that can seem like you're going to go into a waterfall. For some reason, you go into the waterfall, but you come out like unscathed on the other side. And like, yeah, definitely, especially when we are like, okay, I'm guarding my thoughts. I'm trying to at least not do anything wrong here, not be the one who's like introducing something let's say inappropriate in a situation. Like you related your story about for example, like your co-workers. Well, I have a very similar situation. It's not with a co-worker, it's with a girl from the parish that I really like, but I never show that I like her because like for some reason I'm super visible within my parish because I'm a foreigner and this and that, and I'm always like super involved with stuff. And I realized that whether I want to or not, some people are looking up to me, and I'm not I'm not at the standard. I'm not the image of Christ that I would want to be for them. So like I'm I'm super like focused on like, first of all, I have to serve God and not take any detours. And the more I focus on trying to serve God and the less detours that I take, like things turn out even better. And like I get even opportunities to fix past mistakes sometimes, because I simply like have a, let's say, I wouldn't say open attitude, but an attitude of like, um, trying to make a space where the other person can feel like they can come to me with anything. And if it's in my ability to help them, I will help them. Because like I felt like in the, at least in the last month, like something shifted in my own spirituality. I had I was like, I made up with with my spiritual father after I had like a falling out with him. Lots of things like starting like coming into place where I was dealing with my own personal passions. And then it hit me like, no, Christianity is actually like dying to yourself and loving the other person. And it's like, and now that I try to practice that instead of, I don't know, reading theology about it or this and that, like things start falling into place in a way that I cannot even like explain, like job opportunities, this and that. And simply because like people, instead of seeing me for who I want to project I am, they see a person who's like trying to help. And then they project their own things. But like they see a person trying to help and then they want to participate in that as well. So it's kind of like a contagious thing. And now like we're gonna like start a youth group. We're gonna start a lot of things, simply because like these feelings are like contagious. And if you orient yourself, then you start seeing that other people are orienting yourself. And in the same way, like you could even say like when we're at liturgy and someone, for example, crosses themselves, like you could like the body language of the rest of the people starts to adjust as well. Like as one person starts to, let's say, um, cross themselves in a properly reverential way, not a performative way, not in a way of like I'm trying to show that I'm crossing myself in the correct way or whatever. Like, and the more we're trying to get to that authenticity of like really doing it for ourselves, not for the, the smell and the bells and the aesthetic of orthodoxy. I think the better our own spiritual lives will be, and the better like our parishes will be in terms of their health, and the people that will be attracted to them. And like it's not, I completely agree with what you said, Shane, about like let's say not wanting to create content online.
Yeah.
And a lot of, let's say, people who I really respect, like Father Turbo Calls, are talking about these kinds of things as well. And I completely agree with all of those things. But I also see a lot of like I don't know, man. Perhaps I'm deluded about this, but I see a lot of like shining things in the water, and like I'm saying there's fish over there. Like there's fish over there. We have to like start reeling in, and the fish are not just merely like people that could be converted. I'm talking about talents within people that need to be expressed. I'm talking about let's say like good things that can come out of it. Like I know that the state of the young men is terrible. Like a lot of them deal with things like self-abuse, all of those things. But at the same time, like dude, they're there every single Sunday, like no, with almost no fail. So like hats off to them, and yeah, glory to God for all things. And I see them in the path. So I think that's to me, and that's due in a sense because of internet orthodoxy, because of, let's say, content creators who talk about it. It's because, for example, I don't know, the Jordan Peterson Peugeot pipeline, like Father Turbo talks about.
Yeah, but do you think some of that is potentially a problem? Because you're talking about some of these earlier. You were talking about how some of these long-term, or Shane or Athanasius, you were talking about that, how some of these long-term cradle Orthodox think that it's not going to last for this transition. And I guess I'm a bit more optimistic in some cases, being that I'm one of those people that don't have a sense that I'm leaving anytime soon, and I've seen a lot of young people who have gone through that pipeline who seem to take it seriously, don't seem to like they're leaving anytime soon. Yet there is this recognition that the orthodoxy that I see online is not the orthodoxy that I see in the church. And that's like a weird sort of thing to wrestle with, in the recognition that like, and I never really spent much time on the online orthodoxy space. I engaged with people who were Orthodox on online spaces like Bridges of Meaning and Estuary, but like I wasn't following Peugeot. The only sort of online content creator who I listen to, not a ton, but to kind of understand a little more about orthodoxy, was Nathan Jacobs. And he's not this big guy. He's only just recently started posting more regularly. Like there's something about that where it's sort of like, yeah, there becomes this spirit in that orthodoxy space that I get, even as an Orthodox myself, I get a little bit weary.
Not orthodox. It's not orthodox.
Yeah.
Like it's nominally orthodox, I would say. But even like for all its faults, glory to God for it, in the sense of like most of the guys that you're seeing there, some of them have like spiritual issues. Some of them have like severe mental illnesses. Most of them, I would say, don't really attend church regularly. Like, and the thing about orthodoxy that I think is very, let's say, special, at least to my mind, is that it's incarnational and it's embodied in personal relationships. So a person might read theology and like they might pretend like they're a church father come today, you know, and you know, those people, like I also have to say that I think cradles are sometimes a little bit too suspicious in general, and perhaps it's because I'm a convert myself, but I see a certain like vigor in converts that I don't see in cradles, and I think that vigor, of course, it's dangerous, but at the same time, it's super reinvigorating in the sense that a lot of cradles, they're simply culturally Christian. They're culturally Orthodox. They treat the church as if it were like a social club, and that's not really the commission that we have as Christians. So and to like round it up, like you say that you only listen to Nathan Jacobs, who I think he's a tremendous intellectual, like a super powerful intellect, and like he seems like a humble guy and such. And he, in that sense, he seems safe. Like he's safe content because he will not like try to, let's say, proselytize and sell you at least his faith without like appealing to something like reason, because like he's a very like discursive reason kind of guy. Like he argues his way around stuff. But I think like actually the meat and potatoes of our tradition is super mystical. So and I think that we as modern people have an issue because we ourselves have a lot of, let's say, ways in which rationalism has seeped into ourselves. So we become very suspicious easily of other people, and we become very easily suspicious about ideas and such that are foreign to us. But the problem is we don't see that the ideas that we might have, like that we're not being suspicious about, are probably killing us. And and I see that flow in cradles as well, because a lot of cradles, they've went like with the times, in a sense, to the point that their children are probably not going to, let's say, stay in the church. And you know what my concern,
I mean, I think that's too hard to paint a broad brush with that, because the cradle Orthodox I've met have all been very lovely people. They've been excited to see new people in the church. I don't know. I think if that's too, I think that's too much to say, the same way I think it's too much to say that the vigor and the sort of excitement of new Orthodox Christians is just going to end. But let me give you a pause. I'd like to hear Luke. He joined in. Luke, welcome to the live chat. Always lovely to see you. I really enjoyed your live chat the other day. I couldn't join because I was making dinner for friends, but it was helpful to hear, because I'm pondering some of those same questions.
Oh, cool. I don't even I don't even remember what I talked about, but that's cool. Um, yeah. So I think what we're talking about broadly is orthodoxy, converts, cradles, um, new people coming into the faith. I'm one of those. I I guess I only got about 5 minutes. I guess what I would add to the conversation or just throw out there is something that I've been saying recently, and I think it's true, is that although I'm a Western convert to Orthodoxy, and Orthodoxy, I mean, whatever, it's the East of the West. It's not really the East, you know? I mean, Byzantium was just the East of the West. So I like, what's interesting is I didn't convert for the culture or the liturgy. I didn't know it. I converted for the ideas. I like apophatic theology. And so in a lot of ways, I converted to Orthodoxy for very Western religions, which is something that I like to quote this. Brad Jersak said a lot of Western converts to Orthodoxy or Eastern Rite evangelicals, and I think that's essentially what that means. However, that doesn't mean that through the practice and the engagement with the tradition and the sacraments and the liturgies that you won't become through practice much more orthodox over time. You know, and it kind of all this stuff begs the question, like anything, this is a perennial TLC conversation. What is a Christian? What does it mean to be orthodox? Is it somebody who adheres to their theology? Is that what makes somebody orthodox? I don't know. I think that I like Orthodox theology a lot, and I think there's a lot of wisdom and truth there. I think I find a lot of converts talking about how it's right belief, it's the right theology, it's the right liturgy, it's the right this, it's the right that. But there was some great Jordan Daniel Wood tweeted something the other day. It was something like an aesthetic without forgiveness is a barren tree or something like that. And I think like somebody who perfectly practices the liturgy, it's 1 Corinthians 13, without love is nothing. So like you can have all the right theology in the world, all the right practice, and not love. And so somehow, strangely, I'm wondering, I would just throw this out and I'll listen, but I'm wondering if salvation somewhat still lies in the West, because and I'll frame that by saying this verse from the Epistle of James I've been obsessed with it lately. It's almost like the most super condensed summary of everything that I believe. It's like all my theology, which is receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. So like you're receiving something that's already there. It's the implanted word, the implanted logos. It's already there. And it makes me think of he who without change became man and was glorified. O Christ our God, trampling down death by death. So and I think it's one of those paradoxical kind of orthodox Cohen things. It's like the Christian version of one hand clapping. It's outside of your rational mind to be able to comprehend what that means and what's going on. But I think we need the kind of rigorous movement that I think a lot of ortho-bro converts can have is not the way. That's a restorationist way to be like, oh, it's like Byzantine fetishization or something. That's not the way. I don't know what the way is, but I'm here for the combo.
Yeah, well, the question was more like, can that turn towards good? And I'd say, like I would take a very passionate and very wrong person over a very, let's say, lukewarm person who doesn't care either way. And
Yeah,
the very passionate person, like they can be redirected. But in terms of like, for example, the person that is it me, the one with the sound?
I don't know.
No, I think I like.
Can you mute your-
Yeah. Luke left and went.
Okay, so like I think what Luke said was fair. However, I do have a lot of faith in terms of like what I was trying to say about cradles was not me dissing the cradles.
Yeah,
It was
no, I don't think you were meaning that.
Yeah,
I was just creating a counter.
yeah, like what I meant to say was that sometimes it's very easy to miss what's right in front of you if you've never like truly looked at it and appreciated. And I feel like that's the situation. Like for example, yesterday I was talking with a woman who was asking how I found Orthodoxy, because she's like a revert. She was cradle Orthodox, and then she fell away from it, and now she's rediscovering it. And in a sense, like she would be cradle, but from what I gathered from what she said, she had a very like superficial understanding of the faith, that she simply came back for its therapeutic method. It was like, I came back because I feel better when I'm here, which is like
Is that always
glory to God.
wrong?
No, it's not.
No.
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying it's incomplete in the sense that it becomes an idol just as easily as the Byzantine like fetish becomes an idol. In the sense that the Byzantine fetish is an idol of power, is an idol of like success, it's an idol of victory instead of the cross. And in the same way, like feeling good about yourself is the same kind of idol. It's the same kind of like, my life is going good, so things are looking up. And it's not bad that things are looking up. That could be good as well. Like glory to God if things are good. But if that's like your end goal, then you're not a Christian. Like if you're a Christian, like you have to love the other person until it hurts you. Like if it doesn't hurt at all, then you're not loving. So and I think that's the point I wanted to make when it came to cradles, that for their kids, like they're not doing, I think, a good enough job at like transmitting their faith to their children, and like explaining um how vital it is. The children that I see from the cradles, they just see the faith as like, they see only the exterior, and they're not amused with the exterior. And and what I think is very sad, and this is why I would, for example, defend a lot of the internet orthodoxy, in the sense it's like, at least even in their hyper rigor, they're trying to like present theology. They're trying to present like church fathers. My own perspective is like, you should like read the more recent, let's say the more contemporary saints, rather than trying to focus on, I don't know, Saint Gregory Palamas, Saint Maximus, the Confessor, like all of those great fathers, Saint Gregory of Nyssa. Those great fathers are fantastic, but if you don't receive the tradition like from people, that's just an ideology. And to what Luke was saying about, let's say, receiving, uh, we cannot receive what is not there. We cannot receive what is just like our idea of things. Then we're actually not receiving a tradition. We're creating it wholesale from nothing. And like there's these two images that I would like to leave you with. One is that, like, to make prosphora bread, to make the bread, like they use like bread from other, like they use old bread, and the yeast is the same, right? In the same way that when you church plant, you're using relics of the saints. So basically, you're the let's say the Christian testimony is an unbroken chain of, let's say, death and resurrection that is being, let's say, transmitted, even physically speaking. Because when you're making the bread with a old yeast, it's basically the same colony, like living throughout time. And if you're using the relics of the saints to build new churches, then again, that testimony lives on in the tradition itself. But we don't get to like we don't get to like invent the tradition we would like to have. So in that sense, that's the cross we have to bear.
Yeah. And I think that in some ways is fair, but like I was actually talking to a cradle Orthodox woman the other day, and there was this recognition. Well, she was feeling she was venting a little bit of frustration, in the sense that there was a sense that some of the converts coming in were not respecting the tradition that the cradles had, because they couldn't understand the fullness in the way that they saw it. And so I have a hard time jumping to the judgment that
Well, what did she say
cradle,
exactly?
I don't want to say it publicly. It's just, but the sense, because I don't know who watches this, and that's drama that doesn't need to be out in public. But the sense that there is this process of the tradition that I don't think converts fully understand and minimize, because we have such a vigor for theology. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that part can revitalize and bring something beautiful to the tradition. But if we're too eager to say, I see it better than the people who came before, who have lived their whole lives in this, I think we have the tendency to miss something that we can't quite see on the surface.
Well, we'll know them by their fruits. Like if their own children are not in the parish.
But that's not even how salvation fully works in Orthodoxy. The recognition that we're all in the process of being saved, that, we cannot say where God isn't, but we know where God is, and we move towards that. Like there's something to that where it's like, it's just not the end of the story. And yeah, certainly is there a point where it's like, for me, I'm not a cradle Orthodox person, but I want to, my daughter will be. And so how do I learn how to transfer her belief in a good way? That's something I'm going to have to learn. And I do think that there are always sort of trade-offs in the different ways that come, but there is something about what's being transferred through cradle Orthodox that I just get the sense that new converts don't fully understand, because it's not playing out in the way that you think it would be. But like the church is so strange. Saints' lives are so strange. To think that it will always play out the way that it should be. I think that is. I think there's something bigger to the story there, and that's about all I can say about it with like confidence. But yeah, I get a little hesitant about the them against us on either side versus converts and cradle. And
No,
I recognize I'm not accusing that. I recognize you're not trying to do that. You're trying to look at these problems and figure out how do we have a space to kind of talk about those. But yeah, I think there's a space in which sometimes we get lost in the way we communicate it.
Well, yeah, I will definitely agree with look, perhaps I'm being too naive or even too gracious towards new converts, in the sense that converts are inherently, let's say, guests in a house, and they have to respect the rules of the house. They cannot come into the church and try to change the church. That is actually not Orthodox at all. And the reality is that most of these converts that make the most noise are basically incels and very broken people, and people that need guidance, and they're the product of a very broken society. So it's not that I'm cutting them some slack. It's just that when I talk to them in person, I will tell them exactly what I think, but I'm not gonna reprimand them in public. And like when it comes to, for example, I also understand the concern that cradles have, but cradles themselves are like, it's too varied. Like there are super pious, like cradles that have been holding the fort like pillars single-handedly. So and I'm thankful to them, because like when I came to their church, the church was standing,
Yeah.
And and there are cradles who are just like nominal Christians. So it's a very nuanced conversation, and I'm not the one to judge them either. So that's not the way I'm not coming to it from that perspective. But I do think that the demonization of those things is wrong, and I definitely agree that these cradles are speaking out of turn. but the reality also plays out interpersonally in the sense that I'm a 30-year-old man. I weigh almost 80 kilograms. I go to the gym 4 times a week most of the times. I'm a pretty strong guy. If I've had people insult me on the internet that I know they will never ever dare to do the same thing in a parish. So how much of that is the distortions that the medium like introduce, and people at their weakest moment, and who am I to judge them? It's not that I'm a saintly guy, that I'm praying for everyone who's insulting me on the internet. I try to, but the reality is that that's them at their weakest moment. I know for certain they're not like that in the parish, and when they're like that, a good Christian like simply tells them like, dude, you're not behaving properly, and that is easily corrected. The problem for me starts when like people don't take correction. That's the problem.
Sorry, I'm getting distracted by Mick Mo's comedic commentary about your eyebrows, which yeah, well, I'll put one up, but yeah, follow the chat if you want to get more of that gold. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe to circle back to the beginning of this question, for me, I don't have strong opinions on the way things ought to be or who's right, who's wrong. It's hard for me to even have that conversation because I still feel like I don't know enough. But where I get to the place is like, well, how do we have a place where we can make space for these conversations where it doesn't lead to this animosity or this kind of attacking each other on the internet or otherwise, right? And I think generally in person, you're getting less bold attacks than you might on the internet. But I mean, there's this interesting recognition that different worlds get different sets of comments. And in my world, in the TLC world, there are nasty comments, there are facetious comments, but generally there's a lot of people really trying to understand each other and have that exploratory, puzzling nature. And I think if we're going to take it outside of just talking about ideas with people who don't think like we do, but talking about with the things of people where we agree, how do you get to that place where we can puzzle together and understand what is it that is coming in, what has already been there, and how do you have a good way to understand what should change and what shouldn't? And I think we sometimes are missing that conversation in Orthodoxy.
Okay. May I offer some pushback? I'm sorry, I'm just cooking right now.
Sure.
But this is something to consider. Don't you think that you're wanting the world to be like the little corner of the internet that you're idealizing?
Repeat the question.
Like, don't you think that with that framing, as like literally word for word what you said, you're expecting the world to be like the little corner that you're, let's say, saying that it's a place where people have this special attitude of like sharing ideas and all that? Like, I would say that it's perhaps good that it exists, but I wouldn't want the whole world to be like that.
No, but I think if you want to come to better relational connection, even in the midst of different ideas, some of that working together is part of it.
That's exactly the point. Like, you're presupposing that it's the correct way to have better relationships. It's kind of imperialistic, don't you think? It's like we have the right way, and like
no, that's if I said it's the only way, and I didn't.
You said it's the better way. It's the better way.
I think treating each other with some amount of respect is a better way to have relationship. Now, sometimes that respect doesn't mean always saying beautiful, nice things to each other or agreeing with each other, but some of that comes with a building of relationship. And so I think that there is a sense that, and I like, listen, I would not, I'm not here advocating that, different types of the way we operate or have conversation shouldn't be available in a mode that we use. But I think too often we have created a culture where we're looking to defend what we already see versus trying to look at the person across from us and say, okay, I don't understand what they're saying, but I want to. How do I figure out how to listen to them well? How do I figure out how to make sense with the way that I see, and how do I know which one is right? That's sort of what I'm looking at, of like puzzling, and the realization that the world is a mystery, and we all have pieces that we've seen through the life we've lived and the things that we've been given. And
Yeah,
I
well,
wouldn't want to say everything else should stop, but I would like to see this become more of a place where that can happen. It's not always a place where that should happen and it's going to create good things, but there are ways that if we had more of it, I do think it would move us towards something better. And I know that because I've seen it.
okay, that's let's say your experience. I think that perhaps there's a lot of idolatry of, let's say, niceness, and
Sure. I
and
don't disagree.
no, and like
But there's
from my
also a lot of idolatry of bluntness. And
yes,
that
of course, yes, completely
like
agreed.
so
I'm
like,
fighting those guys. I'm fighting those guys today, like right now at this. And the thing is,
and if you think that's the right thing to do, God bless you. But for me, I don't want to fight someone. I want to fight with myself to figure out how to have these better conversations. And it's not going to be by taking on that same spirit.
I don't think it's the conversations themselves. And I love beauty will save the world, but the thing that I see is sometimes, and I'm talking about myself here now. Sometimes I think that I will do things, and that is just pride. I will do nothing. God can use me, but I have to be willing to be used by God. And the problem with trying to offer God to others is it will only happen when we're already giving ourselves to God. So it's the same. It's the other side of the same coin. I see everybody, or most people, not everybody. Everybody couldn't be. It couldn't be this way, but I see most people trying to do things to improve things around them, but they're not praying, or for example, even I'm not a stickler exactly for words. I'd say I'm interested in ideas and such, but I'm not going to persecute someone for using the wrong word. The thing is, when people say theology, I understand what they're talking about. For example, in the case of new converts, they're spouting the words, but they're not living the theology that they're, let's say, quoting from the saints. But theology is to pray. It really is to pray. So in that sense, I don't think that one can have conversations that can change the other person by looking into what we can offer. If God graces us,
you can have conversations to change yourself.
Yes, but at the same time, you're confronting me with a very difficult question, which is, what's the role of the imagination? Because I don't think there's this. The reason why I steered away from Jordan Peterson, in a sense, was because I saw a very big, let's say, chasm between him and what the Orthodox saints were saying about, let's say, the proper way to guide our own souls. In terms of, let's say, Jungian, let's say, spirituality is very Gnostic, and it's about exploring the feelings, exploring, let's say, your dark side, and seeing how to integrate that. So you're constantly confronting the world. And in the case of Peterson himself as a person, he's trying to look for truth, as if he could integrate everything into himself, as if he could defeat every battle that he would eventually come across, right? So it's I'm the conqueror who's always coming up against the dragon of chaos, and I'm going to kill the dragon of chaos and create the world out of it. And that's fundamentally pride. That's not realizing that fight demons long enough and you will lose. You will lose. The demons are smarter and they're stronger. So the only way if you want to fight demons, the only way to defeat them is to constantly ask God for mercy in everything that you do. So there's no just one thing that we can do to offer Christ to others. but we can be the ones who are asking God constantly. And I think that's the way that we win. And that's what I see that neither the rigorous nor the hyper lax understand, which is like we act, it's the royal path. Like I love Father Turbo. He has a podcast on it, which is called The Royal Path, and that I think is fantastic. And it's really that. It's like all glory to God all the time in everything you do. Everything that you have is God's. So to me, it's not like there's something we can do or like some way that we can approach it, because that to me, performatively would fall into the same like Petersonian Jungian kind of way of like trying to like bump ourselves into images that could help us. And the problem is that the imagination is a mercenary organ. Like it can be used by demons or it can be used by angels. And the only way that we can, let's say, be safe that the imagination will help us is if we are vigilant about our thoughts and if we're like asking God constantly for his illumination and to purify ourselves. Until we're purified, then what that will produce is, it's the same as the sola scriptura with the Protestants, that they're reading themselves into the scriptures constantly. It's like if you haven't purified the mirror, all it will reflect will be all your brokenness in it. So unless you start with that inner purification of yourself, then you're gonna be useless in the like. It's like have you seen 300, the movie? You probably have, because you haven't seen the 300.
No, I don't.
It's awful. It's awful. It's an awful movie. But like, there's this character who's like deformed, and he cannot like be part of the army that the protagonist has to use. So he rejects him. Why? He cannot use him. It's like, okay, you have like a good thrust, but you cannot raise your shield. And the fact that you cannot raise your shield means that you cannot fight in a phalanx. You cannot fight next to other people. You could have like a super strong thrust, but like this is not the way that we fight. And I think that's the situation most of us are in most of the time, with some exceptions, some glimmers of God working through us despite us. And surprisingly, that's enough a lot of the times. So instead of like trying to contrive a way to like create the perfect art piece, or like have the perfect conversation, have the perfect argument, have the perfect quote ready for the argument against the heretics, like the best thing you can do is to ask for God to illumine you, to help the other person that you have, like giving them a glass of water if they're thirsty, and that's enough. That's enough. The problem is that we, in our own brokenness, think it's not enough. It's like, and Father Turbo says this a lot, it's like we don't believe that Christ is guiding his church. It's like we don't believe that Christ is guiding his church. Why wouldn't Christian love be enough? And this doesn't deny having conversations, and it doesn't deny having debates, and it doesn't deny like all of the things that were created for God's glory. But it does mean that we cannot put the cart like before the horse. Like,
Yeah, but that's not the argument, right? Like I can agree with you in all of those things. Prayer is like primary to theology and orthodoxy. Like, that's not really the argument, and not even an argument. It's not the thing that I'm pondering. It's like there's something like let's accept that as a first principle, but then the question is, well, how do you love through all of the ways that we live, and in the ways that you feel moved towards? And some of that is going to be the way that we converse with each other, the way that we have these back and forth conversations. And it especially means, how do we have these back and forth conversations, and how do we do that with people who don't share the same ideology with them? And I don't think that the best way to do that is always just to repeat orthodox truth that makes sense to me, because I know so many that it doesn't like, that's not how language works
No, completely agree.
necessarily.
Yeah, the propositional over the performative, over the participatory, or what. I know that you
Yeah.
have your own terminology in the little corner that is fantastic. The Vervaeke for what is.
Well, I mean, I don't really use that terminology. There's a lot of people who do, but like that's there are places where it's helpful or whatever. But yeah, it's sort of like, I think we can probably agree on a lot of things. The and like if we let's assume those things together and say, okay, those are true. Well, what's the next step? And part of that is, how do we engage well with others?
Yeah.
Within our church and without it. And that's where I look at a lot of what happens on online media spaces, and I get a bit discouraged because I don't think it's actually about trying to come to true, beautiful, good ideas. I think it's about defending the true, good, beautiful thing that I see above and beyond where you are seeing something good. And that's something where I think, even if it was outside of this space, if you brought some of that place where it wasn't so much about my own sense of what is true, it could lead us to have better relationships with each other and better trust with each other.
Well, I don't think it's either or. Like that's a dialectic in the sense that
Sure.
you're saying, well, there are people who are appropriating for themselves, let's say, the authority to speak for the church or to determine let's say, a reality. I also think that, for example, let's put it this way. I think that you cannot have a system of love. Like, love cannot become a system, and the way to have a conversations cannot be systematic. It's
Sure.
so particular, and so that it should be guided by an ethos that one has, let's say, interiorized, and
Sure.
which is always, let's say, it is always fallible. Like you cannot, you don't know if you're going to say the right word at the right
Yeah.
time, even a saint who's glorified in the now, living with us, among us. He will never think that he will have the right word to say to someone. So in that sense, I would say that both the person who is like trying to let's say, possess or pretend that they possess, or performatively presume that they have something that they don't most of the times, or the person who says that, oh no, I know nothing, I only know that I know nothing. Those two are, let's say, mirror images of people ultimately relying on themselves to like you said, compete. And I understand you're wanting to find something that is different from competition, but I think, ironically, what Shane was saying earlier in the conversation is precisely the proper. I think it's the proper solution to that question that you had, regarding on how to have those conversations, because it's not the either I know everything or the I know nothing. It's more of like, I know what I know. I can tell you if I don't know, but that's more like you're subject to that or not. Like the other person, the other person can be impossible. The other person can be impossible to deal with.
Well, we're all impossible. I know myself. I can be a really, really impossible person. But yeah, I think, it's interesting. You mentioned looking at other people like competition, and I just don't even look at it that way. I look at it as other people moving towards a similar goal, but playing the game in a different way. And like you wrestle with the thing of like, this doesn't sit right with me and I don't know why. And it could be that I'm the one who is wrong and I just don't see the true, beautiful, good thing in there. But I can't deny those sort of like tensions. And so, yeah, there's that level in which there's that space where it's like, I don't want to deny the helpfulness for those spaces, because even spaces that I sometimes have weariness about in the way that we talk about big ideas, I'd be the first to admit that I've learned something beautiful from them, and from a time in my life they were probably really helpful for me. And it's just that game or that process is just wasn't long lastingly beneficial or sustainable. But yeah, there's this level in which where it's like, how do you get to a place where you can talk about these meaning questions and not let that pride of your own sense of the idea get in the way of seeing the other person, loving the other person, and understanding that they might have a piece to understanding the mystery that could be really beautiful, even if you don't agree with their underlying ideology.
No, that I completely agree with the fact that you can glean like truth from everyone, but it sounded. I'm not trying to caricature what you said or put you in the spot or anything. I'm simply offering pushback because I think it is worth it to say this. Right now, there's like a very big push against ambition itself. And I think that it's true that we should criticize ambition in the sense that not all ambition is good, because bad ambition leads you to being competitive. But good ambition leads you to you trying to look to be all you can be within God, right? So to be the ambition to become a saint, that is healthy ambition to my mind. So in that sense, I bring this up because you're talking about like how not to let yourself be blinded by your own pride. And I would say, is it pride if you have something good to offer the other person? Like, and is it inherently pride to think that you know something that the other person doesn't? Because like life throws you into those situations, like, and you're already in that situation yourself, like you being a mother, like you will have to be the person who knows for your child.
Sure.
And there's no
it's going to be
escaping that.
helpful. It's going to be more helpful to her if I'm in a position of knowing and not complete utter ignorance. I completely agree.
Yeah, and what I I wanted to say something before you said that. Perhaps it's appropriate to say it now. Saint Paisius said something about the bees and the flies that when I first heard it was a little bit like it offended my sensibilities. But I think I think I've grown out of that, which was like bees like go from flower to flower and think that the world. The analogy was they think that the world is fantastic, and like flies go from turd to turd, so they think that the world is a turd. So he was saying like be like the bee, and there's even a channel that is named after that let's say that Saint Paisius teaching. And I think that a good Christian is not blind to the other person's sins or to the other person's faults, but in their heart they do not perceive those faults, in the sense that we are not only to cover our father's nakedness, but we're to cover our brother's nakedness as well. And like, for example, I hope my friend doesn't watch this, but like I have a friend of mine who met a girl. The girl is smart, she's beautiful, she's super well educated. She's very self-willing though. She's a Christian, and she wants to be a Christian, but she's very self-willing. And I told him, like, I know you have, like, my friend stopped seeing her because he thought she was too self-willing, and he was thinking like, I'm not gonna get myself into this bind, like she will make my life living hell. And I thought to myself, yes, if she remains this way, she will make your life living hell. But she's moving in another direction. So like you could be a good example to her, and like you're not going to marry a saint. So like are you expecting you and your future wife to be saints before you get married? Or do you acknowledge that people come with flaws, and that you will have to work on them, and that the purpose of marriage is to work together towards salvation? I know that we all started at different places in the ladder, because for different reasons we're at different stages, we've had different lives, but I think that it's more important to see like the direction in which people are going and to try to imagine the direction in which people are going, because I think that is ultimately more of a better predictor than when they're at spirit now. Like you could be like super advanced, but if you're on the downward trend, like I would put my faith in a person who is like on the lowest rung and like moving up, or at least me perceiving or wanting to believe that they're moving up than the opposite direction. So in a sense, like I understand you feeling discouraged when you see a lot of the things that go on the orthosphere or on the internet in general. But and I wouldn't even go so far as to say like this isn't happening, this isn't true, like this is not a real reflection of the world. I think that's a cope, but at the same time, like why should you let it define everything? Like your own like search for salvation should pull you away from those spaces if you don't if you can't stomach them, if the interaction is bad on you, spiritually speaking. Like if it leads you to despair, if it leads you to have negative thoughts, all of those things. Like with everything, it's like who wants to be told like a bad story? We have the resurrection. Like we want to hear the resurrection. We want to like see, okay, the crucifixion, but then there's a resurrection. We don't want to be like, oh, you died and then you went to hell for eternity. That's not something that's good for us, spiritually speaking. But I do think that some people have an inner fortitude where they can stand more of it. Not my case. Me, I'm more like you in the sense that I don't like that. I don't appreciate it in the sense of it doesn't do me good. But I do think some people can stomach it, but I don't know of anyone who would benefit from it.
Hmm.
If like perhaps there is, like, I mean, Christ definitely does, but he's strong enough. I don't know anybody who's strong enough.
Yeah. Well, it's getting close to 2 hours now. So I'm gonna probably start landing the plane. Ivan, is there any last things you want to say or any other questions you had before we kind of close? I might, if we still have time, I might go through the comments and see if there was anything. There was lots of things going on and anything to highlight, but I want to give you a chance to say whatever or ask a different question if there's something on your mind.
No. Thank you for having me. Do you want me to stay while you read the comments as well?
Whatever you would like. If you want to stay or if you have to go, feel free. But it'll just kind of look through the comments a little bit and see. There was some comment a lot earlier about hell, and I don't want to ignore that question. I would just say that as an Orthodox person myself, hell works a little bit differently than it does in the West. So that I don't think that I can say that you're going to hell, but that's a whole sidebar. And I don't know how serious that question was, but if you wanted it there, I answered it. Hope that is helpful to you. Hazy, you said a lot of like really good things, and they're sort of outside of the context now because the conversation was going so quickly, and I wasn't sure exactly what it was all kind of referring to. But you had one comment that said, "Oh, I want to find it because it was really good." It was something sort of like, "We're both, you and I are both moving towards the temple from different directions," and I guess I can't say I know that for certain, but I also have this sense that it feels true to me. And so I'm glad you put that comment in. I can't find it. I don't know where it is, but I just think that's a lovely sense. And I definitely think, here, I found it. Aren't competing, rather, ideally, we are moving together to the temple. Yeah, and I think that there's something true. Like, ideally, that's what we should be moving towards. And yeah, there's a sense of like, in Orthodoxy, we always say, or well, I guess we don't always say, but what I've been told is, we don't know where Christ isn't, but we do know where he is. And so we do our best to move towards him. And I think there's something really beautiful to that, in that recognition that we might very well be moving towards the temple, even if we don't have the same confidences in the underlying story. So I just thought it was beautiful. McMo, yeah, please someday join a conversation. I definitely got a chuckle out of some of your comments, but yeah, unfortunately, landing the plane, it's getting late here in the Netherlands, so don't have a lot of time. Clara, thank you. It seems like you're new here. There's one comment here. I don't know where else, but thanks for listening. And yeah, if you do want to know more lore from me, you can definitely watch that conversation that Jeff suggested on the Randos United channel, because that's definitely full of my lore. Oh, there it is. Lovely chat with Jeff and yes, my very beautiful, talented husband. All right, sorry, I'm just trying to catch up on all these comments. It's all over the place. Luke, I did hear that your basement is 50% humidity. I don't know where it is, but I'm happy to highlight it for you and let everybody know that you've got a very humid basement. Okay, well, that is that. There were other comments, but I'll have to go through and read them a little more calmly so I can really get a sense of what was going on. But thank you so much for joining this crazy little live chat thing that I do. Again, I plan to be back here again the last Monday of November. Yeah, that should still be the case, although that is leading up to Thanksgiving, so it makes things a little tenuous since I am the only person cooking a Thanksgiving dinner here in the Netherlands. But yeah, if you would like to join, that's what I aim to do. Yeah, so thanks for listening, and thanks everybody for joining. Ivan, Shane, everybody, thank you so much.